A young nurse lost her job when she broke the arm of a patient for touching her. 24 hours later her life was changed. Forever the morning was calm, yet it felt strange when Alina resumed for her shift at the ICU, unaware that by the end of the day everything she had built would collapse completely. She walked through the automatic doors of Jude Memorial. Coffee in hand, her badge clipped, and her mind focused. The ICU was quiet, machines humming, nurses murmuring, another day of saving lives, another day of pressure, patience and long hours. But as Alina clocked in and glanced at the patient assignment board, a strange chill rolled through her. Room 3, a new patient, middle-aged male, Martin Ellis, chest pain. Overnight cleared for heart attack, observation only. Tasha, the outgoing charge nurse, passed to the chart with a raised brow. Watch room 3, his talkative Alina gave a polite nod. Got it. She moved through her morning rounds, quickly checking vitals, updating charts, offering gentle smiles to worried families. This was her rhythm. It made sense. She felt safe here, but the moment she stepped into room 3, that changed. Martin Ellis was wide awake, sitting upright, eyes locked on her the moment she entered. Now that's a good-looking nurse, he said, smirking. Alina didn't react. She dealt with worse. Good morning, Mr. Ellis. I'm Alina, your nurse today, just here to check your vitals. As she approached his bedside, clipboard in hand, he watched her every move, not like a patient, but like a man trying to make a point. His eyes lingered too long, his voice carried that casual arrogance she recognized all too well. You always wear your scrubs like that? He asked quietly. Alina didn't answer. She kept her eyes on the monitor, logging his oxygen and heart rate. Please remain still, she said calmly. He didn't. He shifted in the bed, leaned a little too close as she checked his foreline. You know I like you, he murmured. Ava stepped back. I'll be back with your meds in an hour, she said, turning swiftly to leave. You're no fun, he called out as she walked away. Back at the station, Alina's face was composed, but her stomach twisted. She'd been through uncomfortable situations before, patients who flirted or crossed boundaries, but something about this man felt different, calculated, aggressive. Beneath the charm, later that morning she returned to administer medication. She entered quickly, stayed near the four-pole, avoided eye contact as she leaned in to inject the dose. His hand shot out and grabbed her inappropriately, not subtle, not accidental. It was forceful. Alina froze, her blood boiled. Without thinking, she grabbed his wrist and twisted it sharply away from her body, a defensive move drilled into her during self-defense training. But the man yelped in pain. There was a loud pop. He shouted, "You broke my arm." She broke my arm. Alina backed up, stunned at how fast it happened. He had lunged at her. She reacted. It wasn't an attack, it was survival, but the damage was done. He rolled on the floor, clutching his arm and screaming. She twisted it. She went crazy. Security arrived almost instantly. The noise brought other staff members running. No one asked her what happened. They just stared. One nurse whispered something to a supervisor, and before Alina could even gather herself, she was told to report to the boardroom. 3 hospital executives waited, their arms crossed, faces unreadable. They didn't ask for her version. They read the patient's accusation like scripture, then coldly and without hesitation they fired her. "We cannot risk a public relations disaster," once said. "But he touched me," Ava pleaded. "I defended myself." "You overreacted," came the reply. "You fractured a patient's arm." She was handed a dismissal notice, her ID badge confiscated. No hearing, no review, no justice. As she was escorted out the back exit, Alina's heart shattered. But hidden in that ICU room, tucked high in the corner, was a camera. No one remembered it had caught every second, every word, every movement, and the moment that footage surfaced, her world would shift again, only this time in her favor. At home, Alina collapsed onto the couch like a puppet whose strings had been cut. She didn't cry at first. The silence of her apartment swallowed her whole, a kind of stillness that felt too loud to bear. Her work bag, still half-zipped, dropped beside her like dead weight. Her scrubs clung to her skin, soaked in the residue of fear, humiliation, and disbelief. Then the tears came, hot, angry, helpless tears, the kind that burned. She curled into herself, her knees drawn close to her chest, her breath sharp and uneven. No part of her training had prepared her for this, not the clinical hours, not the years spent working double shifts, not the thousands of patients she had helped walk out of ICU rooms with second chances in their lungs. Now she was the one gasping for air. Her mind kept playing the moment over and over like a broken reel. The feel of the man's hand, the twist of his arm, the cry of pain, the lies, the judgment in the boardroom, the cold dismissal. Every frame flickered in painful slow motion, each memory sharper than the last. Was it too much? Did I go too far? You overreacted. We cannot risk a PR disaster. We're releasing you from duty. Their words clung to her like smoke, and the worst part, they hadn't even asked what happened. They didn't want the truth. They wanted silence, tidy and fast. She stood up, slowly walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. Her hands trembled. The glass clinked against the sink as she set it down. Her apartment had never felt so small. The walls seemed closer, the air seemed thinner, the cheerful throw pillows, the plant she always forgot to water, the nursing textbooks still stacked near the hallway. They all looked like relics from a life that had suddenly been erased. She wandered to the living room wall where her nursing degree hung in a simple white frame. It used to fill her with pride. Now it looked like a cruel joke. Bachelor of Science and Nursing with Distinction, comedy. St. Agnes University, she had earned it with blood, sweat, and soul. It had meant something. And yet all it took was one incident, and it was as if none of it had ever mattered. She walked to the bathroom and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were puffy, her face pale. She didn't look like herself, not the composed, respected nurse who had walked confidently into the ICU that morning. She looked like a stranger who had survived something no one believed. She tried to tell herself she'd be okay, but what did that even mean anymore? Her phone buzzed on the table again. She didn't want to look, but her eyes were drawn to it like a wound being reopened. A message lit up the screen. Hey, heard. What happened? Are you okay, Mara? I see you. Night shift. Ava stared. The message wasn't cruel, it wasn't accusatory, but it was hollow, awkward, hesitant, like someone approaching a broken vase. They didn't want to pick up another one. Followed, I wasn't there, but I hope you know people are talking. Some say the patient said you threw him. I just wanted to check in. Jordan med admin had chest tightened. Then a third one. Do you want me to call you? This whole thing feels messed up. I'm not judging, just weird vibes. Erica. She tossed the phone face down onto the cushion. Her jaw clenched, her eyes red from tears went dry. Why didn't anyone ask her side? Why didn't anyone say, I believe you? The messages felt more like probes, not support, not comfort. No one dared take a side. No one wanted to be caught defending her if it turned out she was guilty. Guilt, of course, decided not by evidence but by optics. Her apartment was still filled with reminders of the career she had just lost. A stethoscope on the dresser, her hospital ID lanyard lying by the door, a calendar on the wall still marked with upcoming shifts that would never come. She opened her laptop intending to check job listings, maybe to prove to herself that life could go on, but the moment the screen lit up, anxiety flooded her chest. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, then dropped. What was the point? No hospital would take her after this, not if her name got out, not if rumors followed her like shadows. She closed the laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. The air in the apartment felt heavy, suffocating. Her eyes landed on the bookshelf across the room, filled with books on emergency medicine, trauma response, anatomy, care, ethics, all carefully studied, all now irrelevant. She had never been written up, never been late, never even taken more than 2 sick days in a year, and yet here she was, discarded like a PR liability. Eventually, the daylight dimmed into a quiet orange dust. She hadn't eaten, hadn't moved much. Time had become irrelevant. Hunger didn't exist. Her energy was gone. She opened the window slightly. The breeze was cool, but it couldn't sweep away the ache sitting inside her ribcage. She changed into an oversized t-shirt, tossed her scrubs in the laundry, and stood in the center of her bedroom, lost. Later, she crawled into bed. Even though the sun hadn't fully set, the weight of the day pressed against her ribs. She wanted to disappear into sleep, into anything that didn't require remembering, but her body was too tired to move and her mind was too loud to rest. Images replayed: the boardroom table, the expressionless administrators, the patient smug look the moment his hand touched her, then the twist, the crack, the scream. The guilt kept whispering even when logic screamed louder. You didn't attack him, he crossed the line. You did what anyone would do, but still the doubt lingered. She stared at the ceiling fan. Round and round it turned, a slow, quiet blur, almost hypnotic, like her thoughts spinning but going nowhere. Ava thought of her mother. She hadn't told her what happened, not yet. She couldn't handle the shame in that conversation. Her mother would say something kind but concerned, and even that would feel like judgment. She thought of her first patient, the old man with Alzheimer's who never remembered her name but always smiled when she walked in. She thought of the little boy with cystic fibrosis whose parents cried when Alina showed up on her day off to hold his hand. She thought of every person who had looked at her like she mattered. Were they gone now too? Had one accusation erased all of them? She turned over, burying her face in the pillow. Her body finally stilled. Her breath grew slower. Sleep crept in, shallow, fractured, fragile, and as Alina drifted into a rest a soul could barely touch. Miles away in the hospital's tech wing, a man named Malcolm leaned back in his chair, reviewing old security files. A flicker on the screen caught his attention, a scene in ICU room 3. He clicked it open, and for the first time since the incident, the truth began to breathe. Ava didn't know yet, but her silence would not be the final word, not this time. The glow from Malcolm Reese's monitors was the only light in the hospital tech room. It was 2:13 a.m. and the silence was absolute except for the low hum of servers and the occasional creak of the old overhead vent. He sipped cold coffee from a chipped Avengers mug, half watching a progress bar crawl across the screen. Another backup, another archive rotation, another night alone in the bowels of St. Jude Memorial, where the only lives he touched were in file directories. Malcolm didn't mind. He liked the quiet. He liked his servers. They didn't lie, cheat, or throw people under the bus. People did that. He rubbed his temples trying to focus. He was supposed to be performing a random audit of motion-activated security files, something routine, something forgotten, a compliance requirement, really part of a new internal policy after legal threat 6 months ago. Most of the footage was dull: nurses adjusting equipment, patients being wheeled, and janitors mopping until one file stopped, and cold ICU see him 3 archive footage, timestamp 7 hours 41 minutes and 22 seconds to 7 hours and 43 minutes. The preview thumbnail caught his attention, a blurred image of movement, a nurse's blue uniform, a man raising his arm. He clicked the footage, loaded, grainy but clear enough to see faces. The camera was fixed in the top corner of the ICU room, a wide angle Lens capturing everything from the bed to the vitals monitor to the entry door. Malcolm leaned forward. He saw the nurse. A young woman. Her name tag wasn't visible from this angle, but he recognized the face. Alina. He passed her in the hallway dozens of times, never spoke to her, not really, but he remembered her because she always made eye contact. Always nodded politely. The kind of small kindnesses that stuck. The man in the bed was older, middle-aged, thick wrists. Greasy smirk. Malcolm watched silently as Alina approached the four-pole, prepared a syringe, and calmly administered medication. She moved like a professional, focused, calm, by the book. Then it happened. The man reached up fast and grabbed her inappropriately. Malcolm's breath caught. She recoiled instantly, saying something the camera couldn't capture. Then in a blink she grabbed his wrist, twisted it to break free, a move out of instinct, defensive. Precise. The man collapsed to the floor, howling dramatically, clutching his arm. Then he started yelling loud, animated, pointing at her, accusing her of an attack. Malcolm leaned back, stunned. He paused the video. This was not what had been reported. He remembered the internal memo that had circulated just hours earlier. Nurse Alina Ramirez released from duty due to misconduct following a physical altercation with a patient. They had fired her publicly. No one mentioned he touched her. No one mentioned this. His eyes flicked to the security log. The file was archived but not flagged. No one had reviewed it. No one had reported it. They buried it. Malcolm stood up slowly, the air in the server room suddenly feeling too thin. His pulse was racing. He walked a few steps in circles, trying to breathe. This was bigger than a glitch or a lost file. This was a cover-up. He sat back down and watched the footage again and again. He watched her body language, the way she flinched, the way she tried to leave her professionalism, her restraint. She had defended herself. He opened the hospital's internal disciplinary database. Alina's file had been updated earlier that evening. Fired for conduct unbecoming of a medical professional. Pinning further legal review. He stared at the words for a long moment, then closed the screen. He had a decision to make, and he knew what it meant. Hospital policy was clear. Tampering with security footage, even for noble reasons, was a fireable offense. Whistleblowing wasn't just frowned upon, it was a red mark in his industry. He could lose everything, but how could he sit on this? How could they all go on pretending she had done something wrong when this video told a real story? He knew what happened to people who tried to fight giants. They got buried, their resumes got quietly blacklisted, their phone calls stopped being returned. He sighed, resting his forehead against the cool edge of the desk. Then slowly he pulled out a flash drive from his drawer, the one he kept tucked under a sticky note that read diagnostics only. He inserted it. He copied the video, the entire raw file, and then on a second screen he opened a browser window to a secure TR connection. He accessed Health Truth, an anonymous whistleblower blog that had exposed hospital misconducts before underpaid staff, fake reviews, falsified patient outcome metrics. He drafted a message subject: footage that proves Nurse Alina Ramirez was wrongfully fired. Body: this file shows a nurse defending herself from an inappropriate act, not assaulting a patient is claimed. The hospital has this footage. They ignored it. Please review and publish. She deserves justice. Anonymous hospital. It attached the video and hit upload. The browser refreshed. The video was in the queue. He pulled out the flash drive, wiped it clean, and deleted every trace from his local cache. Then he sat back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. What happens now wasn't up to him. 3 hours later the video dropped. Health Truth's post titled "What St. Jude Memorial Doesn't Want You to See" was live by sunrise. It had over 40,000 views by 10 a.m. It was on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, users reposting it with captions like, "She got fired for this. This is why nurses are leaving the profession. Protect Alina Ramirez." Malcolm watched the spread quietly from his desk. His name wasn't on it. His face wouldn't appear, but his heart beat hard as the video reached 100, then 300, then 500,000, and still no word from the hospital. But the world was no longer silent. The leak had broken the dam, and nothing would ever be the same again. It began with a ripple, then a wave, then a full-on storm. In a quiet corner of the internet, a whistleblower blog uploaded an unassuming post at 3:42 a.m. The headline was simple: "Watch footage shows nurse defended herself, not what hospital claimed." At first only a few clicks, a few nurses sharing it in private groups, then a retweet from a mid-size influencer in the medical space, then a comment thread exploded on Reddit before the sun had even risen. The video had passed 200,000 views by 6:30 a.m. It had made its way into the inbox of a producer at a major news station by 7:15. It was the lead story on 2 local morning shows. One anchor's voice quivered as she read the script: a nurse fired for defending herself, but new footage paints a very different picture. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Alina Ramirez slept deep, dreamless sleep, the first in over a day, but it was uneasy. Her body curled beneath a fleece blanket, was still processing trauma. Her mind wrestled in half-conscious flashes of the boardroom. The patient smirked, the sound of his scream as he collapsed. The words "unprofessional conduct" echoed in her head like static. Then her phone vibrated once, twice, then a flood. She stirred, blur-eyed, blinking against the dawn leaking through the blind. She reached for the phone blindly, expecting perhaps a message from her mother, or maybe one more awkward text from a colleague, trying not to choose a side. But her screen was chaos. 22 missed calls, 67 text messages, over 300 unread notifications. What did she murmured sitting upright, her heart thumped as she opened the first message. Alina, it's out, the video, you need to see this now. Mara, another came through instantly. Girl, you're on the news, they played the footage, everyone's apologizing, and another, I'm so sorry, we were wrong, I was wrong. Alina's breath hitched, her fingers trembling. She opened Twitter, her name filled the trending bar. #justice for Alina. She clicked it and the video was there, still frame of her in room 3, blurred slightly, the words overlaid, nurse fired after defending herself. What she tapped play, the moment unfolded again, this time from a new angle, a quiet bird's eye perspective from the corner of the room. She saw herself walking calm, professional, the patient on the bed, her movements precise as she prepared medication, then the hand. His hand reaching out, grabbing her face tense. She stepped back, said something the MIC didn't pick up, then the twist, the defense dropped like dead weight, shrieking. Alina covered her mouth. The tears didn't wait, but they weren't like yesterday's, filled with rage, shame, and confusion. These tears were hot with relief, with truth. Her body shook, but this time from something deeper. It was release. She watched the video again, this time noticing the comments flooding beneath it. She did nothing wrong. Where's the apology from the hospital? I'm a nurse, this happens more than anyone knows. Support Alina Ramirez. Now she scrolled further and what she saw stunned her. News articles, headlines, nurse wrongfully fired, surveillance proves self-defense, security leak shatters, hospital's narrative, protests erupt outside St. Jude Memorial. There were photos now, people gathering with homemade signs outside the hospital where she once walked in. Proud and hopeful, she saw one sign in particular held by a woman in scrubs. Alina Ramirez. Her chest heaved, more messages poured in, some from fellow nurses she hadn't spoken to in months, others from total strangers. Then her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something told her to pick up. Hello, her voice cracked. Miss Ramirez, good morning, my name is Dr. Helena Moore. I'm the chief administrator of Redwood National Medical Center in San Francisco. Alina blinked. We've seen the footage, all of us, and I won't sugarcoat it, we were horrified but also inspired. You showed restraint, professionalism, and courage under impossible conditions. Ava's eyes brimmed again. She said, nothing. I'd like to offer you a position at our facility. Dr. Moore continued, director of nursing advocacy, 6-figure salary, full relocation, private housing, and national speaking opportunities. We want you to lead a conversation this country has ignored for too long. Ava sat there, breath caught in her throat. Was this real? We would be honored, Dr. Moore added, if you became the public face of healthcare safety reform. Silence. I don't know what to say, Alina finally whispered. Say yes, Dr. Moore replied kindly, then say nothing else. Let the world speak for you. When the call ended, Alina placed her phone down gently and stood up slowly, barefoot on the hardwood floor. Her body still felt like it belonged to someone else. She walked to the living room window and looked outside. The street was the same, the world was turning just as before, but she was not the same. She walked over to the wall where her framed nursing degree still hung dusty and slightly as she straightened it. Then she whispered, you still matter. A chime from her laptop drew her attention. She opened it and found her email flooded with interview requests from Good Morning America, The View, even CNN. An official inquiry from the American Nurses Association had landed too, requesting a keynote address. At their national conference, the floodgates had opened and the world was not just watching, it was listening. Later that afternoon, Alina sat curled up in a blanket on the couch, knees drawn to her chest, phone buzzing beside her. She didn't answer every call. She didn't need to. The truth had gone farther than she ever could have chased it herself. It had found its way home, and with it so had she. 1 week later, the air in Manhattan was brisk that morning, a quiet wintry breath that whispered through the glass towers of the city like an omen. Streets bustled with energy, but inside the grand entrance of St. Francis Institute of Health and Reform, the world stood still. For a moment, Alina Ramirez stepped through the front doors in a crisp white coat. Not the same coat she had once worn at St. Jude Memorial. No, this one was new. Pressed, stitched with precision on the left side, embroidered in elegant navy thread, was her new title, Director of Nursing Advocacy. Her heels clicked softly on the polished marble as she crossed the gleaming atrium. The massive skylight above bathed her in morning light, giving the moment an almost sacred air. This was not just a job, this was her resurrection. Hospital staff paused as she walked past. Some smiled, others nodded wide-eyed with respect. Nurses from other departments whispered her name. One young intern dropped her pin, startled by the realization of who had just walked in. Alina Ramirez. Her story had become more than a headline, more than a trending hashtag. It had become a movement. She approached the executive wing where sleek modern plaque hung by the entrance. We believe in justice, integrity, and second chances. Beneath it, a framed photo of her, not one taken by paparazzi or stolen from her past, but a recent portrait commissioned by the board itself. In it, she wore no makeup, no forced smile, just her raw and real, looking directly into the lens as if daring the world to lie to her. Again, the receptionist rose from her chair. Good morning, Director Ramirez. They're expecting you upstairs. Thank you, Alina said gently, the words steady in her chest. She rode the elevator to the 18th floor where the administrative council waited to greet her. The space was warm, elegant, glass walls, open light Bookshelves filled with titles on leadership and medical ethics. A man in a navy blue suit stepped forward. Dr. Elijah Tran, the hospital president. Ava, he said, extending his hand. Welcome home. The phrase struck something deep home, a place that had once betrayed her, but now it welcomed her, not just as a nurse, but as a leader. They walked together toward the boardroom where her staff orientation was scheduled. She was introduced not as a new hire, but as a partner in change. The floor is yours, Dr. Tr said, motioning to the head of the table. Alina stepped forward and spoke, her voice low but resolute. I don't stand here today as a victim, she said. I stand here as a witness to what happens when truth is ignored and what's possible when it finally speaks. Applause followed, but Alina was already thinking ahead too. Days later, she was flown to Washington, D.C. The National Medical Safety Summit was a sea of white coats, lanyards, name tags, and plastic chairs, but none of that mattered to Alina. What mattered was the podium at the center of the stage. She stood backstage, waiting. Her heart thudded, not from fear but from the weight of what this moment represented. Behind the curtain, her name echoed through the auditorium. Please welcome Nurse Alina Ramirez, Director of Advocacy, St. Francis Institute, and survivor of wrongful dismissal, who sparked a nationwide call for accountability and healthcare safety. Applause, thunderous applause. She walked out onto the stage. The room still. Flashes went off. Phones lifted into the air. Rows and rows of doctors, nurses, administrators, journalists, all watching her. She wore her white coat, beneath it a simple black blouse, her hair pulled back, no jewelry, no accessories, just her and the truth she carried. She stepped to the microphone. For a moment she just breathed, then she began. I was silenced once, Alina said, her voice filling the room with something electric, but a camera told the truth when no one else would. Silence, not from disinterest but reverence. I was told that I jeopardized a hospital's reputation, that my self-defense was aggression, that my years of service, my spotless record, my compassion could be erased in one moment, and I believed it. Her voice trembled slightly, but she didn't look away. I walked out of a place I once called home, fired, ashamed, confused, and for 24 hours I thought that was the end of my story. She scanned the audience, some wiped tears, others leaned forward, clinging to every syllable, but it wasn't the end, it was the turning point. A hush fell over the room, thick with breath and memory, because the moment I thought no one would believe me, the truth surfaced, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. She placed a hand on her chest. I wasn't just one nurse, I was every nurse who ever stayed silent, every healthcare worker who was mistreated, overlooked, underpaid, dismissed. I became their mirror. A pause. Then I'm not here today because I fought harder. I'm here because the truth found its voice, and now I carry it for all of us. The applause erupted again, but Alina lifted her hand. She wasn't finished. From this moment on, we build a system that doesn't silence truth but defends it, that doesn't punish instinct but protects integrity, that doesn't throw away its caregivers to protect its image. She nodded, her voice softening but firm. We start today, right now, not because the spotlight is on, but because it's long overdue. When she stepped back, the audience stood, first in small clusters, then in a wave, a standing ovation, not just for the speech but for the journey. Alina bowed her head, not in pride but in peace. Backstage, a young nurse approached her, tears in her eyes. I almost quit last week, she said quietly. I watched your story unfold. I didn't think anyone would care, but you made me stay. You reminded me why I started. Alina touched the girl's shoulder. You're the reason I stood up, she said. We protect each other. Now, later that evening, Alina stood alone on a balcony at her hotel, the Capitol building, glowing in the distance. The night was cool, the world was loud with possibility. She pulled her coat tighter and looked up at the stars. Somewhere below, 1,000 more nurses were watching her speech. Online somewhere across the country, a medical school was adding her story to its ethics curriculum. Somewhere a hospital board was rewriting its disciplinary policy, and somewhere inside her that old ache of humiliation had finally been replaced by something else, legacy. She turned back into the room, her phone lit up with a message from a producer. Would you consider a documentary? Another from a senator's office. We want your voice in the national healthcare reform hearings. Ava smiled. She wasn't just part of the conversation now, she was the conversation. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing real, powerful stories like Alina Ramirez's to life. What did you think of Alina's journey from the moment she was wrongly fired at St. Jude Memorial to the quiet courage of Malcolm, the systems technician who leaked the truth, to the national breakthrough that gave Alina her voice back? We want to hear your thoughts. Was justice served? Did it end the way you hoped? Tell us in the comments. What would you have done in AA's shoes? And while you're at it, rate the story on a scale of 1 to 10. Be honest, we want to know how this story resonated with you. Also, where are you watching from? Drop your city, state, or country in the comments so we can see how far AA's story has traveled. This is more than a story, this is a movement, and you're part of it.